Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another video. It's another Premier League aftermath video we've got in store for you. Is talking all about the weekend's Premier League games, of course, looking back at them and talking about the major talking points of this past weekend. Saw some brilliant matches, some great results up and down the table. Every game was full of something. Lots of goals to talk about, lots of talking points, including, of course, Arsenal's 3-1 victory over Manchester United. We're going to be talking about both sides of the spectrum there. Man City's epic 5-1 victory over Fulham in what was pretty controversial circumstances for the game as well in that one. Spurs looking good, 5-2. It finished there between them and Burnley. Their away trip to Burnley ended in 3 points for Postecoglou's side. Brighton winning 3-1 against Newcastle. Evan Ferguson with a hat-trick on the day. It was a day of hat-tricks, actually, on Saturday with Erling Haaland, Son Heung-min and Evan Ferguson all getting the match ball at the end. Liverpool winning by 3-0 on Sunday's games. Chelsea, the shock result of the weekend, losing to Nottingham Forest by a 1-0. Brilliant result for Forest on that one away from home. Anthony Elanga with the only goal of that game. We'll talk more about that later. Palace beating Wolves by 3-2. Luton's first home game of the Premier League ended in defeat to West Ham, the informed West Ham under David Moyes. Sheffield United and Everton finally getting points on the board as their game finished 2-2, a game that doesn't really help either side going into the international break. And it finished the same scoreline of 2-2 for Brentford against Bournemouth, in which Brian Mbeumo rescued a point late on for the Bees. We're going to be talking all about these games. We're going to be going through them and analysing them. Like I say, talking about the major talking points and everything along those lines. But before we go any further, I would like to remind you to please like the video and also subscribe if you're new. Both things always and very greatly appreciated. Also, get involved in the chat. Would love to hear from you all. Would love to hear what you have to say on any of the game of this past weekend's talking points or any talking points you have in general about the Premier League. I'm sure it'll make for great and interesting reading. So do get involved down there. But without further ado, let's get into the video. Let's talk the Premier League. Let's talk the games that we witnessed this past weekend. And we're going to start with, obviously, the biggest game of this round of fixtures, the main event of this round of fixtures, Arsenal versus Manchester United. It took place at the Emirates Stadium on Sunday, and it ended 3-1 to the Gunners. Overall, I thought the game was a bit of a weird game. United, in my opinion, set up to take the point. They were not really, they were focused on mainly taking the point away from home. It's understandable. They weren't as attacking minded as probably what we would have thought a United side would have been. They weren't as gung-ho, shall we say, as we thought they could have been. But at the same time, United had a game plan, and that game plan was to make it out there with a point, make it difficult for Arsenal, and if they can get anything more out of the game, then that's just a bonus. And it almost actually paid off to the point where they almost got 3 points. Marcus Rashford scored the opening goal of the game. He got the ball rolling, drew first blood for Manchester United at a time where the opening first half of the, first half was a bit of a slow burner. Nothing really happened. Arsenal was seemingly comfortable passing the ball about, but they weren't really testing Manchester United. Both teams looked pretty comfortable in that aspect. And then all of a sudden, Christian Eriksen, one ball down the left wing, releases Marcus Rashford. He's got Ben White on toast, and then he finishes brilliantly to put Manchester United in front. The lead, though, didn't last too long. It only lasted maybe less than a minute, as Martin Odegaard managed to equalise for Arsenal straight away after Rashford's goal. Odegaard, brilliant finish, brilliant setup by Gabriel Martinelli, and a great finish by the midfielder. And then the game from there was Arsenal's for the taking, but United always looked dangerous on the counter-attack. Arsenal again had a lot of possession. Arsenal had a lot of possession in the Man United half. United were content to sit back. Onana, to be fair, wasn't really tested that much. The one time he did well to save from Saka from close range. Other than that, nothing really happening. United had an opportunity for Anthony Martial, which was saved by Aaron Ramsdale. And then in the dying embers of the game, we're like into 6 minutes of added-on time at this point. Declan Rice from a corner kick, which Arsenal had been underwhelming from all game. Declan Rice fires a deflected effort. Onana couldn't keep it out, and Declan Rice puts Arsenal 2-1 up. And there was still time for Gabriel Jesus to, on the counter-attack, manage to add a third, managed to take advantage of United pushing forward in search of an equaliser, for Fabio Vieira to slip him in behind the United defence, and for Jesus to send Diego Dalot sliding back to Portugal as he sat him down and then slid the ball beyond the on-rushing goalkeeper, Andre Onana. Great result by Arsenal. Fantastic result. But the one moment in this game that really turned it was obviously the goal ruled off for offside by Alejandro Garnacho. The game was at 1-1. They were just about to enter 90-odd minutes. And Garnacho goes through on goal, and he does brilliantly well to finish beyond Aaron Ramsdale. We can't argue whether it was a 1v1. Garnacho did brilliantly well to finish the ball off, but on replay, his shoulder is seemingly just offside, proving once again that the offside law does need looking at, because, again, as much as it is offside, and it is offside, like, offside is offside, like, it is what it is. It was very, very close. If Gabriel doesn't move his head out of the way, or whenever he does, in that kind of weird sort of reaction, but at the same time, it probably could have just saved Arsenal at that point, him doing that. It could have been a different story come the final whistle. Could have been a very different story come the final whistle. And like I say, it was extremely close. It could have been a turning point, but it was rightly called off offside. I think the offside law still needs looking at. I think it still needs changing. With you looking at your feet position rather than where a certain body part is above the feet, because let's face it, the feet is where your base, that's where you stand from. That's what's giving you more of an advantage than obviously where your head is, where your shoulder is, where your elbow is, where your nipple is, whatever it may be. That's just in my opinion anyway. So I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on that particular part of the offside law for that. But yes, it could have been very different. After the match, Erik ten Hag's post-match press conference or interview was very interesting, to say the least. He disagreed with three things. He disagreed with the Garnacho goal that was given offside. He didn't think it was offside. He thought it was onside. I don't know if maybe he'll change his mind if he sees a different angle. He disagreed with, I think, the Declan Rice goal. I think there was a foul. I think he said there was a foul in the build-up. And there was another thing he disagreed with that I don't now remember. I made a note of it, but I don't remember what it was. He came after the interview and he said three things went wrong against him, and that was the difference maker and a game of fine margins. For me, I say that if Jurgen Klopp or Pep Guardiola gave that interview, they get called sore losers, they get ridiculed and mocked online. I want to see Erik ten Hag suffer the same kind of thing, in all honesty, because, like I say, if it's Jurgen Klopp, if it's Pep Guardiola, even to an extent Mikel Arteta, they get ridiculed and mocked online. So I do want to see it happen with Ten Hag in this situation, because, like I say, there were close calls and they were somewhat controversial. On some other days they may be given, some other days they may not be. But at the end of the day, the offside goal definitely was offside. So it is what it is on that score. But it has been a bad week for United. And I want to make a video. I'll probably make a video later on this week. Now that we're entering the international break, of course, obviously it's freeing up some more time and everything to talk about like how the Premier League has started and everything. And I want to talk about United a bit more because it has been a bit of a tough week for United. It has been a pretty tough week. Obviously, the end of the transfer window in what was a slightly underwhelming, shall we say, transfer window for United. Bit of a disappointing one. They didn't quite get all the targets that they wanted, or all the positions and all the players that they wanted in this transfer window. Followed up with the news that maybe, just maybe, the Glazers aren't going to be selling up anytime soon at all. So that adds more to that fire. And then, of course, a disappointing result against Arsenal in this one, in which I thought they played pretty well. I thought overall United were actually playing pretty well. I thought this was probably their best performance of the season so far, and yet they still didn't manage to come out with anything because, like I say, I thought Arsenal, for the possession that they had and everything, they didn't test Onana at all. Apart from that one opportunity with Saka, they didn't really test Onana at all. And United were disciplined, they were calm, they were resolute. And in the end, it was just one lapse of concentration that led to obviously the Declan Rice goal, not getting out to him quick enough, not closing him down. That was ultimately what I think it boiled down to. I didn't think they were that bad in their play. They looked dangerous on the counter-attack, but it was about how Arsenal just kept with it, stuck by their guns, and continued to probe and continued to obviously try and break down a stubborn United defence that ultimately caved in the end. And like I say, Arsenal then went on to take advantage as United went in search of a winner. But by that point, the game was probably already over. And then, of course, Arsenal rubbed salt into the wounds by adding a third through Gabriel Jesus, of course. What is worrying, though, is the amount of injuries that are picking up, particularly in that centre-back area, to the point where United finished off the game with having Johnny Evans and Harry Maguire as your two centre-backs. Now, if that continues going forward, that is a massive worry. If Martinez's injury is legitimate and obviously is going to be out for a certain amount of time, the thought of playing them two together is absolutely terrifying if you're a United fan, I'm sure. As a rival fan like myself, it's hilarious that you would play them two, that you would have spend all that money in the past couple of years alone under Erik ten Hag to arrive at a centre-back pairing of Evans and Maguire. That is pretty funny. But yes, worrying if you're a United fan, I'm sure. You've obviously got all the Jadon Sancho stuff as well. It kicked off that Ten Hag dropped Sancho for being unprofessional, not training well, that kind of thing. And Sancho put out a statement saying that's not exactly true. There's more to this story than meets the eye. He's sick of being a scapegoat. That's the main key. That's the main thread I took away from Sancho's statement, is that he doesn't want to be made a scapegoat. So there's probably more to that story. So, yeah, it's been a bit of a mad week. It's been a mad week if you're a United fan and a part of Manchester United, and it doesn't look like it's going to get any quieter going into the international break, even though without club football, it probably should. But I still think there's more to these stories than meets the eye, and that we're going to get more answers to or more questions for going forward with how United currently operate. Yeah, a mad week if United. And I've said it time and time again. I said it a lot last season. To me, United are a ticking time bomb. I said it a lot last season, and it never really came to fruition. I always said that a few bad performances here and there, a few bad apples in that dressing room a few poor performances, whatever the case may be, may turn the tide at United. And this whole feel-good factor that Ten Hag has been trying to build up again at Old Trafford may come crumbling down. And it might have taken a bit longer, and maybe I'm reading too much into this, but this Sancho stuff, the whole the result yesterday, not exactly starting off the season in the best possible way. 6 points from a possible 12, losing to the likes of Tottenham and now Arsenal, of course. And I know that United's away record is pretty poor against the top six in particular, or the traditional top six, or whatever you want to call them. But at the same time, still no results in either of those games. They were very, very incredibly fortunate to, of course, beat Wolves on the opening day of their season. And against Nottingham Forest, they found themselves 2 goals down in the opening 5 minutes, which I think against anybody else, they probably would have found it even tougher to get back into the game and ultimately win. But they were slightly fortunate that it was against Forest. Forest's away record is pretty poor. And obviously, things were all right for them in the end in that game. But like I say, it does feel like United again is on a slippery slope, and it is a bit fragile right now, and it does seem like it's a bit of a ticking time bomb. I might be reading too much into it, though. I've got to admit, I more want that to happen than maybe it actually is happening. Maybe I am looking too much into it, into the maybe cracks that may be starting to show. Maybe I am, and maybe it's more through hope than it actually happening. But at the same time, I do think they are causes for concern, and maybe some things to actually look at as far as what United are concerned. But poor result for United. Arsenal, on the other hand, brilliant result for them. I didn't think they were great in the entirety of the game. I thought they were actually... It's weird. I know that obviously they've got to have players to bed in and stuff. But I think they spent 200 million and looked worse than last season. And I know they are worse because at this point last season, they were perfect. And this point this season, they've already dropped a couple of points. And they were very, very close to dropping more points in this game. Had United been a bit more resolute, maybe Garnacho timed his run just a fraction of a second earlier, it could have been even worse for Arsenal. But those are the fine margins that you play with. Ultimately, it's 3 points on the board for Arsenal, another win for them. And yeah, they continue to go marching on. Like I say, wasn't the best of performances by any stretch of the imagination. I thought United probably... I wouldn't say they were the better side. I would have said maybe a draw would have been fair. But in terms of United looking dangerous on the counter-attack, Arsenal still looking slightly vulnerable on the counter-attack. Arsenal not really testing the United goalkeeper. I thought a draw might have been a fair result. I think the scoreline, if you are to take it at face value, does flatter Arsenal a little bit. Of course it does. They took advantage of, obviously, United pushing up for that equaliser in the dying embers of the game to obviously get their third goal. So, yeah, it's a big result by Arsenal. Get back to winning ways. They needed that, especially after dropping points last week to Fulham. Big result. Obviously, going against United will make it even sweeter for them, the bit of a rivalry that they have. But, yeah, good result by Arsenal, and they maintain with the majority of the pack, obviously a couple of points behind Manchester City. And talking about Manchester City, that brings on to our next game of focus, which was Manchester City's absolutely thumping 5-1 victory over Fulham. Surrounded in a bit of controversy, though. City draw first blood. Julian Alvarez finishing off a fantastic cross by Erling Haaland. Brilliant goal by City. Well worked and well finished by Alvarez, who's had a brilliant start to the season in his slightly newer role, shall we say. You then have Fulham instantly reply through Tim Ream, similar to how Fulham's corner kick worked against Arsenal last week that earned them a point with Palhinha scoring. It was a very similarly worked free corner that, again, resulted in a goal. Tim Ream following up. Ederson could only parry the shot from, I think it was Jimenez. I'm not 100% sure on that one. But yeah, parried the shot. Tim Ream was there on the follow-up to score from extremely close range. He was never going to miss from there to make it 1-1. And then right on the stroke of half-time, controversy struck. It was a City corner. Nathan Ake heads into the back of the net. And the controversy is that Akanji is stood right in front of the goalkeeper in an offside position that causes a distraction to the goalkeeper. He has to literally jump out of the way of the ball in order for the ball to travel into the back of the net. Now, if he's not there, there's a very good argument to say that the goalkeeper makes a diving save and saves the ball. However, VAR doesn't consider this and allows the goal anyway. How? Explain to me how this one is a goal. How? I would love it if someone can explain to me how this one managed to stand, because Akanji is stood right in direct line of the goalkeeper, direct eye view of the goalkeeper. The goalkeeper can see him. The goalkeeper is expecting him to get some sort of touch on it in an offside position that may divert the ball away from where he was originally planning on diving. And yet VAR decides, we'll let it go. We'll let it go on this one. It's a bit of a madness to me, and I don't quite understand how that is. In all honesty, I don't understand how that managed to stand, in my opinion. And Fulham were clearly frustrated. Marco Silva, after the game, was clearly frustrated about that, and rightfully so. It's a definite offside call, which I think the majority of the time is given. But for one reason or another, again, the referee makes a mistake, but you can't say anything about it, because if you do, you get booked for dissent. These referees, and again, it's another topic that I might discuss whilst, of course, we are in this international break, more on referees a little bit later on. But at the same time, absolutely abysmal refereeing again. Absolutely abysmal refereeing again. The second half, though, is all about Erling Haaland. He scored a hat-trick, and if you were after hat-tricks, there were hat-tricks galore. On Saturday, 3 hat-tricks were scored in overall throughout the day. One of them was for Erling Haaland, who scored a brilliant second-half hat-trick. One was a very well-taken finish to slide the ball beyond the goalkeeper. One was from the penalty spot, making up for his penalty miss last weekend. Erling Haaland made no mistake this time around in smashing the ball into the back of the net. And the third one was a very well-taken strike after being set up by Sergio Gomez on the left-hand side. 3 points for City, 5-1, job well done. The controversial moment may not have meant much in the long run. Of course, yes, City were always expected to win this game, particularly when they're at home. But at the same time, that is not the point. The point, obviously, is that you're meant to referee the game properly and with integrity. And with VAR at their disposal, they still managed to get these decisions wrong. Like I say, the whole notion that VAR is to completely eradicate all mistakes and that there will be no room for controversy is made up. It's ridiculous. Of course, there's going to be the occasional decision which proves to be controversial. But for something that clear-cut, for something that obvious, it is absolutely baffling that that was given as a goal to Man City rather than a free kick to Fulham for offside. Having said that, of course, you had to play with what we're given. City, perfect start. City remain perfect. City remain unbeaten. Perfect. 4 wins from 4 going into the international break, sitting top of the Premier League still. going from strength to strength, it seems. Erling Haaland scores his 6th goal of the campaign in 4 games. Absolutely phenomenal by his standards. Alvarez deserves special mention as well. He's been in fine form since the beginning of the campaign. And yeah, City go from strength to strength yet again. And the only blemish, obviously, on this is not keeping a clean sheet. And I think I've got something to do with that because I put Edison in my dream team just because I think that his defense bails him out and gets him some clean sheets from time to time. Well, clearly, as soon as I put him in against Sheffield United, he concedes. And then I keep him in this week and he concedes. So I think my fantasy team have let him down or I've let him down on the fantasy side of things on that one. And we'll talk more about fantasy football in the next game because we're going to be talking about Spurs and Burnley, in which Son got a hat-trick and how annoyed I am about that. But no, City go from strength to strength. Fulham, look, obviously this was going to be a free swing. They'll be annoyed by the goal that put City in front. But ultimately, it's always horrible to say because you never know. You never quite know. You never quite know if that's going to be a turning point or not in a game like this. And yeah, we'll see. We'll see on that one. For Fulham, they'll move on. It's a bad time to go into international break on the back of a thumping, but at the same time, they'll move on. They'll move on. Next, Spurs against Burnley. Spurs winning this one by 5-2. Spurs remain unbeaten so far in the Premier League this season. Postecoglou remains unbeaten in the league, and he has Son Heung-min to thank a lot for this game. His hat-trick, a day of hat-tricks, continued in the Premier League on Saturday. Son getting the second of 3 hat-tricks for players in the Premier League. Fantastic result by Spurs. Fantastic result. Like I say, Son got the hat-trick. And again, if I am to follow on the fantasy football trend, I had Son in for the first 3 weeks of the Premier League season. First week, he did nothing. Second week, he did nothing. Third week, he did nothing. I take him out for the 4th week. He bags a hat-trick. He bags a hat-trick. This is why I hate fantasy teams. This is why I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I had him in for 3 weeks and he did nothing. And then the 4th week, he scores a hat-trick. On a serious note, though, Son's new position starting up front meant that obviously Spurs were playing with 11 players this weekend rather than 10. No Richarlison. He dropped to the bench. And you can instantly see that Spurs' Son was so much better with the South Korean playing through the middle. And the result shows 5-2, an incredible victory that started off poorly by going a goal down through Lyle Foster. But then Son scores to equalise. Very well taken, exquisite little chip over the goalkeeper. Christian Romero with an absolute thumping effort from the edge of the penalty area put Spurs in front. Absolute quality goal from the centre-back. James Maddison, the very much informed James Maddison, brilliant signing and brilliant start to the season so far for Spurs. Made it 3-1. Son made it 4-1. Son then completed his hat-trick before Burnley grabbed a consolation goal right at the death through Josh Brownhill to make it 5-2. Look, I'll admit, for right now, Spurs are in fine form. Spurs are quality. And I said for the past couple of weeks that Spurs are turning into a quite oddly likable team right now. Postecoglou is weirdly likable. The team is weirdly likable. They've got this likability factor about them now, Spurs, that they haven't had in a few years. I remember growing up, they used to be quite likable. They used to be quite nice to watch. They've got that back now. They haven't been that way for a number of years between, the final kind of half a season almost of Poch to the point where you're going through Nuno and Jose and Conte. They've not had that since their managers. Postecoglou's come in and instantly, right off the bat, made them a bit more likable. And they're playing some really good football, and it's proof in the pudding by the way that their results are going. I wouldn't get too overly excited or overboard on this, though, Spurs fans. Like I say, as much as this is looking really good right now, as much as it is looking like it is all on the upwards trajectory and all that, I will just throw in the word of caution that I have been throwing in there for the past couple of weeks. You've still got a hell of a long way to go. Do not go overboard on this. You've still got a long way to go. We've been here before. Spurs fans should know that they've been there before with these types of managers, where they've started off the season really well. The new manager bounce has kicked in right off the bat, and it's been result after result after result. And then all of a sudden, it slowly nosedives. They get a bit too ahead of themselves, and it nosedives. And I just want to throw that out there. I'm not trying to be Mr. Down and depressing and all of that stuff for Spurs. I'm not trying to rain on your parade or anything along those lines. I'm just warning you that as good as it is, as great as you're playing, as much as I think James Maddison's an absolute steal. And by the way, I don't actually think that James Maddison is your signing of the summer, if you are to go for it at an individual team level. I think he's great, and I'm not denying that. I think your signing of the summer is Mickey van der Ven, because the way that he is controlling that defense and leading that defense, and even making Romero look like a competent defender, is incredible to me. I think Van der Ven is definitely your signing of the summer so far. And that's obviously in close competition, shall we say, with Maddison on that one. But I say, I like them both. And I would have loved it if Liverpool had signed either one or both. Mainly Van der Ven, because I think he could have really improved that defense, not just for the short term, but for the long term as well. But like I say, it's all looking really good for Spurs right now. Just don't get ahead of yourselves. Try and stay humble. Try and stay realistic and positive, but realistic, shall we say. Positive, but realistic. Like, enjoy it whilst it's there, but just be aware that obviously we've been here before. We've seen Tottenham have unbelievable starts to the season, and then by November, December time, it starts to nosedive. So just be aware. That's all I'm saying on that one. But a fantastic start nonetheless by Spurs. And they go into the international break second on goal difference. As for Burnley, tough start to the season. No points at all on the board so far. Vincent Kompany, is he looking a bit overrated? I know it may be early days. And I know obviously they've had a very tough start to the season by facing the likes of Manchester City, Spurs. Obviously, the Luton game got postponed. But, of course, there was the... oh, God damn it. Who did they face last week? Why is my memory just gone? Was it Palace last week? No, Villa. Villa, that was it. It was Villa. I know Villa's obviously going to be tough opposition for most teams this season. But at the same time, yeah, things have got to start picking up for Vincent Kompany. It's got a couple of goals, though, which they can take with them. So at least finding the back of the net is not necessarily an issue for them. It's more the defensive side of their game. But there should be some more favourable games, you would imagine, coming up on the horizon that maybe they can start getting points on the board for. So we'll wait and see how Burnley react after the international break, of course. Moving on, Brighton 3, Newcastle 1. Evan Ferguson with a brilliant hat-trick. The youngster continues to impress, and he continues to go from strength to strength in terms of his development and in terms of his growth into the game. Callum Wilson grabbed a consolation goal in the second half later on. Proved to be nothing more than that, but Brighton ended up rounding out 3-1 winners against the Newcastle side who looked tired, looked poor, looked dejected. Brighton cut them open on multiple occasions, and had it not, and if it wasn't for I don't know, maybe a bit more of a clinical razor edge in the final third, it could have been even worse for Newcastle. But yeah, it's been a tough start to the season for the Magpies. I know that they've had a pretty tough start. I know that facing I know that obviously they went from Aston Villa winning at 5-1 and doing that in convincing style to then losing to Newcastle to then that complete sucker punch against Liverpool last week. And then, of course, losing right now to Brighton. I know it's been a very tough start for them in terms of the opposition that they face, but at the same time, with what they have spent, with what they are looking to do, with the way that obviously they played last season, they're looking to go from strength to strength. And so far, it hasn't quite panned out that way. Defensively, they looked weaker without Botman. Botman was a huge miss for Newcastle in this game. Brighton looked great. Brighton made their chances count this time around. Evan Ferguson, like I say, youngster, massive potential, probably the next in a long line of Brighton players to obviously be the next to leave the club and obviously go on to make them some big money. But at the same time, they look good. Brighton look very, very good. And like I say, a bit more composure in the final third. They could have actually really scored more goals for them. Like, I think that's the one criticism of this game. Other than obviously not keeping a clean sheet, you could maybe argue that Brighton could have scored more goals. I think the opening 20 odd minutes or so, I think Newcastle were in the game. Newcastle making life a bit difficult. But then after that, Brighton regained their composure. They grew to the occasion. And like I say, Evan Ferguson was brilliant all game. Evan Ferguson was absolutely fantastic. And like I say, I'm interested to see his development going forward and how well he does in a Brighton shirt and whether or not he's going to be making the next big money move away from the Amex Stadium going forward. Brighton recover from last week's defeat to West Ham, of course. Big result for them in this one. For Newcastle, like I say, I know it's been a tough start and I know they're going to be much more favourable games on the horizon, but that midfield balance, like losing Botman is one thing in the defence. Massive miss, massive absentee. But that midfield, I thought it was going to be more balanced bringing Tonali in. It just seems like they've lost a bit of the industrial side of things that Longstaff may provide rather than Tonali. Just maybe a bit more so. It doesn't look it doesn't look as balanced as what it did last season. And I am a little bit worried that maybe it's taking a bit too much time to gel. Obviously, they've got big games coming up in the Premier League. Of course, they've got the Champions League on the horizon as well. I'm just curious as to why they're not at their peak yet. Why they are seemingly faltering a little bit. Maybe it is just early season stuff. Maybe it is just the fact that Tonali's coming in and he's trying to bed into a new league and a new system and a new team and everything. And maybe it's upset the balance a little bit. But yeah, it doesn't it doesn't look great right now for them. But at the same time, plenty of time to turn it around, plenty of time. Wouldn't get too overly bored on a meltdown just yet. But at the same time, it is a little bit cause for concern. And maybe the international break has come at the perfect time for Newcastle to obviously, for the most part, maybe for whatever players they've got not travelling on international duty to, of course, more work on the training ground, reshape, refocus, get some fitness into the legs of the boys and go from there, basically. But yeah, fantastic result by Brighton. Get back to winning ways. 3 points on the board, 9 points from a possible 12. Yeah, I think Brighton would have been happy with that. I don't think they were too happy about the West Ham result, but at the same time, their clinical edge in that game was missing. But yeah, the way they're playing right now, they're looking dangerous and they look like they can give anybody a good game and a good run for their money. Brighton are going to be very exciting and interesting to watch this season against anyone and anybody. And that includes, of course, their Europa League campaign, which, of course, is on the horizon themselves. So look out for Brighton by all things considered. Next up, Liverpool 3, Aston Villa 0 is what it finished on Sunday. My team proving me wrong yet again in terms of, in the preseason, in my pre-match predictions, I said this would finish 2-2, simply for the reason that every time I back against Liverpool, they always go on to win. So in that kind of reverse psychology sort of thing, I kind of did the right thing. I still feel bad that I would never fully back Liverpool, but at the same time, I'm happy with the result, and I think I tricked footballing gods, if that is to be true. I'm just rambling a bit now, but there you have it. 3-0 to Liverpool on the day. Dominic Szoboszlai, Matty Cash own goal, and Mohamed Salah all on the score sheet for the Reds as they ran out comfortable 3-0 winners. Bit of controversy surrounding the Szoboszlai one, as well taken a goal as it was, and a fantastic finish, a beautifully controlled finish with amazing technique being showed by the Hungarian international. There was a bit of controversy. We spoke earlier about Manchester City's goal being controversial in terms of Nathan Ake's goal going through Akanji to obviously end up in the back of the net. Well, something similar happened in this one, where Mohamed Salah seemed to be standing in an offside position as the ball went through from Szoboszlai. It might just be that he was more out of the way. That can only be the reason why I don't think it was properly checked or looked at or given offside. I think with Akanji's, he's literally jumping out the way of Ake's header. With Salah, he is stood there, but the ball still just goes straight past him. He doesn't have to jump out the way or anything. He just watches the ball go by. So I do think that might be the cause for why they didn't look at it. I don't know if I think if you disallow one, you've got to disallow the other, in my opinion. I think with the way that it kind of goes, if he was genuinely stood in a very clear offside position. But at the same time, it was a beautifully well-taken goal by Szoboszlai, not taking anything away from that. And he opened his goal-scoring account for Liverpool for his career and the season, of course. Matty Cash own goal was created by Darwin Núñez. Trent Alexander-Arnold was fantastic all game, and I'm hoping that his hamstring injury isn't serious that he picked up. But in terms of his attacking play and some of his passing in this game, it was absolutely sublime by him. He was back to his best in this one. In an attacking sense, by all things considered. He releases Salah down the right-hand side, as he did so often in this game. Salah inside to Darwin Núñez. Núñez fired a shot, it hit the post, and it bounced back, and Matty Cash was very unfortunate to obviously find himself in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he couldn't quite clear it, and the ball hit him and went into the back of the net. It happened at such a quick speed, it was always going to be difficult to try and clear the ball from the way that he was running and everything. So it was a little bit unfortunate on Cash. But on that, Darwin Núñez, he didn't get a goal, but he got sort of the assist, I guess you could say, for the second goal. And he definitely got the assist for the third goal. His header found Mohamed Salah at the back post from a corner, and Salah bundled the ball home from close range. Núñez was sublime. Núñez was fantastic. Like, he missed a couple of big chances. I'll criticize him on that. He missed a couple of big chances. But other than that, he was sublime. And I always say that the mark of a good striker is not just you putting the ball into the back of the net. It's obviously an important part, and you're obviously brought in to do that. But it's about how you conduct yourself when you're not scoring goals. And he was a constant thorn in the side of the Aston Villa defence all game. He was constantly running them ragged with his pace. He was forcing them to drop back. Pau Torres looked absolutely terrified of this guy running at him and singling him out and everything throughout the entirety of the game that he was on the pitch for. And like I say, the only thing missing was a goal. I think he hit the post 2 or 3 times. He missed a very glorious opportunity in the second half. Salah's cross, and he doesn't really go with it with his head. He sort of tries his feet, I think, and it just doesn't quite connect properly to get into the back of the net. But yeah, it was unfortunate for him. that he didn't get his goal, but I thought he had a very, very good game. Rival fans will probably look at his stats and say, "Oh, he missed a couple of big opportunities. They weren't that great. He was back to the same old Darwin Núñez as weeks gone by before last week. Darwin noodles, all that kind of stuff." But he was great. He was very, very good in this game, and like I say, his pace is going to be terrifying. I still think he's a player that we use for certain games that with teams that play a high line and we can get at in behind. Like I say, Trent's passing today, or yesterday, should I say, was absolutely outstanding, absolutely exquisite. Szoboszlai continues his strong start to his career. McAllister in the makeshift number 6 role, I guess you could say, was brilliant as well. Diaz was a constant threat as well. And I think that front three is terrifying. Like, I like what Gakpo offers, and I think in certain games you have to play Gakpo instead of Núñez. I like what Jota offers, and I think in certain games you have to play Jota, especially with his finishing. It can be lethal at times, but in games like this where you're going to be facing a team that play a slightly higher line than usual, Núñez, Salah, and Diaz is the way to go, because them three were particularly terrifying in behind the Aston Villa backline. And with Trent's passing on point, which it was, and McAllister's, who can obviously do that kind of stuff as well, you'd imagine that they're going to have a field day against any team that plays a high line. Any team that plays a high line, if the passing's on point from the main creators of the team, they're going to be. And just a quick note on Szoboszlai as well. That guy is unbelievable. I love Szoboszlai already. Like, he never stops. He never stops running. His pressing, particularly in that first half, was on point. His pressing was unbelievable. He was brilliant all game. And like I say, he scores a goal, and it was a very well-taken goal, a beautifully well-taken goal. Such great technique. And it's deserved. It's very much deserved. I thought he was unlucky not to have got a goal against Bournemouth when he played so well. Obviously, the Newcastle game was difficult for him, but I still think that his work rate in midfield went a little bit under the radar, considering obviously Núñez took all the headlines. But this guy, he never stops. He never stops. And I think more and more people are going to start watching him if obviously his form continues the way it has. I know the international breaks come at a bit of an awkward time, as it always does every year. But if he can pick up where he left off, we have got a serious player on our hands, and one that is worthy of obviously taking that number 8 shirt, the iconic one, rather than the previous player who was obviously a number 8, who's not here anymore, and thank God. Thank God he's not here anymore. We have got a serious player on our hands with Dominic Szoboszlai, and one I'm very happy for. So, yeah, all things considered, brilliant result by Liverpool. And the icing on top of this particular cake, of course, is a clean sheet. I had forgot what a clean sheet looked like, and not just because my bed needs changing. I forgot what a clean sheet looked like in terms of, obviously, in terms of a footballing sense. But yeah, brilliant. Alisson made a couple of brilliant saves again. We've got the clean sheet, we've got the win, we've got the 3 points, we've got 3 goals, and we've got 10 points from a possible 12. And I think if you'd have offered any Liverpool fan that at the beginning of the season, I think they would have snapped your hand off. A point at Stamford Bridge against Chelsea now doesn't look that bad. It doesn't look that bad, a point against Chelsea at Stamford Bridge in hindsight. And obviously, hindsight is a wonderful thing. Liverpool going to the international break, 10 points out of a possible 12, 3 wins from 4, 1 draw, unbeaten so far this season, scoring goals, picking up a clean sheet finally. Unbelievable. Brilliant. Can't ask for anything more than that. And I praise everybody involved in that one, especially because I thought this would be a much more difficult game than it actually turned out to be. For Villa, just didn't turn up. And again, goal scoring seems to be their issue. They had a few chances. They did have a few chances against Liverpool, but they just ultimately couldn't take them. I know that Alisson, like I said, proved to be a big difference maker in terms of obviously his performance. I thought he was very, very good. And I thought, again, he made a couple of very good saves. But at the same time, Ollie Watkins, no goals so far this season for the striker. It's a bit worrying when last season, of course, towards the end, he went on a bit of a brilliant goal-scoring run that he doesn't seem to be able to rediscover so far this season. I think the international break has probably come at the right time for Villa. I know that they've obviously picked up 6 points from a possible 12. I know that they obviously lost to Newcastle on the opening day of the season. They lost to Liverpool, obviously. They picked up wins against the likes of Burnley and Sheffield United? No. Luton? No. No, not Luton. Not Luton. That's going to bug me now. Oh, it's in my brain. Some Bournemouth. Someone has gone. It's gone. It escapes me. It's gone. Yeah. 6 points from 12. Not a bad start. Not the worst start. Not the best start. But yeah, international breaks come at the right time, and they really need to get into Ollie Watkins and find out what's going on with him. Like I say, he's missed a few big chances so far this season, not managed to get on the score sheet. He needs to step up for Villa going forward. But otherwise, great result for Liverpool. Couldn't be happier with the result. Couldn't be happier with the performance. Yeah, and we seem to be picking up a bit of momentum again. I don't want to jinx it. I don't want to kind of hope the international break kind of ruins it for us. And let's face it, when we return, we are going up against Wolves on a 12:30 kickoff on a Saturday. Now, two things. One, 12:30 kickoffs never normally agree with us. Two, 12:30 kickoffs never normally agree with us, especially when we go into it as heavy favourites. And with Wolves currently in the form that they're in, and we'll talk about Wolves a little bit later on, I am still not entirely positive on that one. I'm still slightly worried. As much as we should be going into that game going, we're going to smash them, we're going to beat them, we're going to stick about 4 or 5 goals past them. I still worry a little bit. So I've got cause for concern. But for right now, we'll enjoy it for what it is. We're going to the international break and, you know, bore ourselves to sleep throughout it. But at the same time, it is what it is. And we shall return with a game against Wolves 12:30 on a Saturday. We'll see how that goes. Chelsea 0, Forest 1 in what was ultimately the biggest shocking result of this weekend's round of Premier League fixtures. Chelsea got off the mark last week against Luton with a first win under Mauricio Pochettino, 3-0 victory, a comprehensive and comfortable victory in the end for Chelsea. But they couldn't follow it up this week. And they end up losing to Nottingham Forest. A goal from Anthony Elanga in the second half of the game proved to be the difference maker as Forest pick up a big victory. Not just in terms of just a big victory overall against Chelsea, but a big victory on the road away from home. If there's one thing we know about Forest, it is that their away form doesn't exactly match up with their home form. And of course, this is a massive result. Big 3 points for Steve Cooper's side. And, you know, you could argue that maybe they deserved it. They rode their luck at times. Chelsea had plenty of opportunities. But again, it's Chelsea. And it's the same old story for Chelsea. They just don't take their chances. They created many. They created several. But they just Don't take their chances. And it was a mistake again from the likes of Caicedo and Thiago Silva that ultimately caused Anthony Elanga to run through on goal. And it was a beautifully well taken goal by Elanga to obviously put Forest ahead and ultimately win the game for Steve Cooper's side. But Chelsea created a hatful of chances that they just didn't take. They just didn't take them. Nicholas Jackson, again, he's got all the makings of a quality centre-back. Centre forward. His movement is great. His link-up play is great. His intelligence to be in the right place at the right time is great. His finishing, his composure lets him down time and time again. And that's that chance he had in the second half. And you know what chance I'm talking about. Sterling cuts the ball back from the byline and he's pretty much inches away from the goal, right in front of the goal. It's an open goal. I think his miss is worse than Casemiro's last week. His miss has to be worse than Casemiro's last week. He skies it. He skies it. He gets underneath the ball and he skies it. It's worrying for Chelsea. And the thing I will say again is, and I've been calling for this, Chelsea fans need to be patient because if you turn on Poch, you go again next year with another manager that comes in that probably takes a look at half the squad and goes, don't want half these youngsters. I want to bring in my own players. And then you've got another time to gel, another time to work. And you go in vicious circles again. So you need to stick and be patient with Poch. That's what I'm calling for with Chelsea fans in this situation. But your striking options, the longer that Jackson continues to miss these chances, and you would imagine that theoretically, he should start scoring more goals. It's only a matter of time, or it should only be a matter of time before he starts scoring more goals. That's the hope. That is the hope. But the longer he continues to miss these chances, the longer he continues to miss big gilt edge opportunities like the ones he missed in this game, the more pressure it puts on not only himself, but the likes of Nkunku to come back and hit the ground running instantly. We've not seen Nkunku yet due to injury. He should be returning maybe after the next international break, I think, if I remember reading it right. He's been a big miss so far, potentially, but we don't know because we haven't seen him in the Premier League. We haven't seen him with Chelsea yet. But like I say, the more chances that Jackson misses, if Nkunku is to play through the middle, the more pressure there is on Nkunku to work instantly. That's the pressure Nkunku may face in entering this team right off the bat. He's got to start putting away these chances because if Jackson isn't, I don't necessarily know where the goals are going to come from in this Chelsea team. And they can share them, but is it going to be enough? Is it sustainable? This game should have been 3 points for Chelsea. This game should have been 3 points for Chelsea. You'd have to find the most diehard, maybe even deluded Forest fan to have thought that they would come into this game away from home at Stamford Bridge against Chelsea that smashed Luton 3-0 last week. Find that person to think that they were going to win this game. I don't think they would. I don't think anybody thought that Forest were going to win this game, but they did. And fair play, full credit to Forest. Played brilliantly well. Defending improved from last week, of course it did. And going forward, they made a few chances themselves. And Wunye continued to be a thorn in the side of the Chelsea defence. Elanga obviously gets his goal. A couple more players that are coming in after deadline day, of course. You've got Callum Hudson-Odoi coming in. Divock Origi seems to be coming in on loan. That's going to be a big move, I think, for both him and for Forest. Exciting times for Forest. Exciting times all round. And like I say, they can pick up a few more points on the road. They'll be comfortably safe this season. Comfortably safe. They can pick up a few more points on the road. I think they'll be fine. Their home form, I have no complaints and no qualms over. But the away form, like I say, does need to improve, and this could be a big statement statement victory, and a big boost to that away form in terms of Steve Cooper's side. So fingers crossed for them. I do have a soft spot for Forest, obviously being from Nottingham and everything. So I do have a bit of a soft spot for them, but ultimately, brilliant result for Forest. And for Chelsea, well, back to the drawing board. Back to the drawing board. I think for Poch, I think he made a few strange tactical decisions in terms of squad and squad personnel, playing certain players out of position or slightly out of position or whatever the case may be. But at the same time, you've got to take your chances. That's not on Poch. That's on the players. Taking the chances is on the players. And they created many. So we shall see. Next up, Palace 3, Wolves 2. Big result for Roy Hodgson's side. Odsonne Edouard got the ball rolling, opening the scoring. Heung Hee-chan equalised mere minutes later. Eze, brilliantly well taken goal to put Palace back in front before Edouard scored Palace's third. Kuna got a goal back in the dying embers of the game, but it proved to be nothing more than consolation. Palace held on in injury time and managed to take all 3 points. Big win for Roy Hodgson's side. Didn't really watch this one. I was watching the Liverpool game, so only managed to watch the highlights of this one. But yeah, it looked a very good result for Palace. And like I say, they're always going to be a tricky side to face. They're always going to be difficult to face on Roy Hodgson's side. And they pick up 3 points here against the Wolves side, who, again, the only thing that you can probably say about Wolves in this one is they managed to score a couple of goals. So, yeah, again, it's not great defensively, pretty poor, but there was some good play by Palace in there as well. The goals were well taken. The goals build-up play-wise were actually very, very good from Palace's point of view. But yeah, a big 3 points for Crystal Palace in this one. Very well taken by them. Fair play to them. Fair play to Roy Hodgson. Solid. Luton 1, West Ham 2. The first game at, Kenilworth Road ended in defeat for Luton Town with their first home game in the Premier League. Jared Bowen opened the scoring. Kurt Zuma with the second goal. And then in the dying embers of the game, Anderson managed to grab a goal back to sort of an interesting finale, but ultimately West Ham managed to hold on to the victory. Not the greatest game in terms of quality. Both sides looked okay until it got to the final third. And then in the final third, it sort of, it was just lacking that extra bit of quality to really punish the opposition. There were a few chances where both sides could have hurt the opposition, but a lack of quality, a lack of composure kind of denied that from this being a much more higher scoring game than what it was. Ultimately, brilliant win by West Ham. They got the job done. It could have been a very difficult game with obviously it being the first home game of Luton Town in the Premier League and obviously the atmosphere and everything, but they managed to overcome the occasion and managed to get 3 points on the board. Brilliant result by them. Unbeaten so far this season. They look very good in terms of being clinical and taking their chances. Maybe not so much on the possession side, but it's what you do with the ball sometimes that matters more. And like I say, what they do with the ball and how they take their chances. And like I say, with Jared Bowen seemingly backfiring on all cylinders again, it seems that that West Ham are only going to get better from this point on forward. If obviously that continues, Antonio as well proved to be a difficult and thorn in the side of the Luton defense as well. He seems to be backfiring again. So it's all looking positive for West Ham. And like I say, it's been a fantastic start for them. And like I said, and if you offered them 10 points from the opening 4 games, then they would have snapped your hand off as well. So brilliant result. There'll be tougher tests to come. Of course they will. I think they go against Manchester City as soon as we're back from the international break, if memory serves me correctly. So, of course, there are going to be tougher tests on the horizon for David Moyes' side. But to go into the international break, 10 points from possible 12, 3 wins from a possible 4. Absolutely fantastic from the London side. As for Luton, no points on the board. Again, another game in which there are positives, but they just lack the quality where it matters most to really put teams to the sword. Of course, there'll be easier games than this, but there'll also be difficult ones as well. It might be a tough season for Luton. Might be. Like, I'm not trying to be disrespectful or anything. Like, of course, they're going to be the favourites to go down this season. And I put them to go down. I think a lot of other people put them to go down. But there is hope. There is hope that maybe they can take some of the elements of positives from their opening performances and maybe try and work on them a little bit more and try and implement them a bit more and tighten up defensively. They can tighten up defensively and they can obviously try and nick a few goals on the counter-attack. Then maybe they might have a chance of staying up, particularly at home. But it's not looking good right now for Luton Town. Sheffield United 2, Everton 2. Great game that played out at Bramall Lane between these two sides. Both of them were winless coming into this one. Both of them managed to pick up their first point of the season. Doesn't really help either side immensely, but it at least gets them on the board. Everton went ahead through Abdoulaye Doucouré, scoring the first goal of the game and the first goal of Everton's season, of course. They had to wait 3 and a bit games to get that opening goal, but eventually they did, with Doucouré bundling the ball home from close range. The lead didn't last too long, though, as Sheffield United got back into it and they equalised through Cameron Archer. Brilliantly well-taken goal by the Sheffield United man to equalise. And then on the stroke of half-time, a very... You know, it's funny because I dislike Pickford a fair amount, but at the same time, very unfortunate the way that this own goal played out for the England goalkeeper. A shot that bounced off the post. Brilliant counter-attack, by the way. The build-up play was very good from Sheffield United, and then the curling effort that hit the post, bounced off Pickford and into the back of the net to put Sheffield United in front. Everton, though, did equalise in the second half through Danjuma, another well-taken goal there. And like I say, like buses, aren't they, for Everton? You wait ages for 1 and 2 come along at once in the same game. Danjuma getting on the score sheet for Everton there. And then in the dying embers of the game, Sheffield United had a glorious opportunity to take the lead and take all 3 points. If it hadn't have been for a fantastic save by Jordan Pickford, a fantastic double save by the England goalkeeper to deny Sheffield United from taking all 3 points, meaning that the shares are spoiled. Everybody goes home with a point apiece. Good result? Maybe not, but it's a point on the board. It is a big point to go into the international break with. You wouldn't want to go into the international break with no points on the board. So I guess that this is a big point for both sides. Positives to Everton. They finally managed to score. Defensively, they were a little unfortunate with the second goal, but Sheffield United did play some good stuff to obviously make that second goal happen and to obviously make the first goal happen as well. I thought the first goal was very good, very well executed, and very well taken. The second goal, like I say, was very unfortunate on Pickford's end that the ball just ended up hitting him and went up into the back of the net off the post, of course. But that's just your luck sometimes, I guess. But he made up for it with a fantastic double save towards the end. Also positive for Everton, their new signing, Beto. He seems to have taken very well. I think he played pretty well in the League Cup game. I didn't really watch it, but I think he played well in that League Cup game midweek. And he played very well in this game as well. He was a thorn in the side of the Sheffield United defence. And I thought, like I say, he looks decent. He does look pretty decent. He looks like he's going to be a big physical presence up there, but he's also got a bit of speed to his game as well. So It's going to be interesting to see how he continues and whether or not he can be the guy to really save Everton this season in terms of actually being a consistent enough goal scorer to steer them clear of any sort of relegation battle. As for Sheffield United, of course, they're going to find it difficult this season. This could have been a big opportunity to take 3 points. Slightly unfortunate in certain ways. Pickford, like I say, fantastic double save at the end. But ultimately, defensively, again, individual errors kind of cost them a little bit. So we'll see. We'll see how they go about their business. We'll see how Everton continue with their new striker. We'll see on that score. And finally, we come to another 2-2. Brentford 2, Bournemouth 2. Bryan Mbeumo rescuing a point very late on for the Bees. Jensen caught the goalkeeper out of Bournemouth with a cheeky free kick. That was, again, caught the goalkeeper off guard, and it only just about crossed the goal line for goal scoring for the goal line technology to buzz on the referee's watch to award the goal. Brentford were unlucky though. Brentford created a hatful of chances and they were unlucky. The post denied them on 2 or 3 occasions. They created a few chances, good goalkeeping by the Bournemouth goalkeeper. But then defensive errors let them down. First, Dominic Solanke equalising for the Cherries before Bournemouth went ahead through David Brooks, who grabbed a goal after obviously a horror of an error from, I don't remember what Brentford defender it was, but it was a horrible error. It allowed Bournemouth in, and the pass through across the face of goal for Brooks to take it beyond the goalkeeper and then to finish well. A very well taken goal by Brooks indeed. And then just as it looked like the Cherries were heading to their first victory under their new manager Andone and their first victory of the season, Bryan Mbeumo gets played through on goal, and he continues his fine start to the season with a brilliantly well taken finish to put the ball beyond the onrushing Bournemouth goalkeeper and to rescue a point for Thomas Frank's side. Good point for Bournemouth in certain senses. They'll be annoyed that they couldn't hold on for the victory. But ultimately, Brentford did deserve something from the game. They were bitterly unlucky on a few occasions to have hit the post and hit the woodwork on a number of occasions. But yeah, ultimately, a good point for Bournemouth. Unfortunate for Brentford. They'll be thinking they could have done a lot more in this game, and being at home, they probably should have done more to put Bournemouth away. It is what it is on that score. So big win for not big win. It's a big point, I guess you'd say, for Bournemouth. For Brentford, they might be looking back at some of those missed opportunities and maybe their shooting drill is going to be worked on in the international break. But so far, so good for Brentford. Unbeaten this so far this season. 1 win, 3 draws, I believe. I believe it's 1 win and 3 draws. Let me just double check this one because this one is going to annoy me. Brentford. Yes, 1 win and 3 draws, unbeaten so far this season, as are Man City, Tottenham, Liverpool, West Ham, and Arsenal. All of those teams are unbeaten so far this campaign. So yeah, they're heading into national break, looking pretty decent so far. So that is all we're going to be talking about for this Premier League roundup show. Like I say, for Bournemouth and Brentford, Bournemouth I do worry for. This season. I put them to go down. I know they play some good football, but defensively they still look a bit shaky. Going forward, putting the ball in the back of net seems to be a bit awkward for them so far. We'll see obviously how they progress. For Brentford, no issues whatsoever. They're going to be comfortable no matter what. And like I say, it's been an all right start for Thomas Frank's side. I think they could have got more points on the board. They probably should have got more points on the board, but at the same time, unbeaten so far, 1 win, 3 draws, 6 points out of a possible 12. Not a bad start so far for Thomas Frank's side. Not the best, not the worst, bit mediocre in the middle, which is what I expect Bournemouth to kind of achieve this season. Those are just the thoughts, comments, opinions, predictions, feelings, whatever you want to call it, of this guy. I want to know what you guys think. What do you make of all of the games that I talked about this past weekend in another round of exciting Premier League action? What do you think of all the talking points, all the games, all the results? I would love to know your thoughts, your comments, opinions, predictions, feelings, whatever you want to call it, in the comment section down below. I'm sure it'll make for great and interesting reading. Otherwise, hit the like button on the way out if you enjoy the video. Subscribe if you're new and want to see more content like this. Both things are always and probably greatly appreciated. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening. I've been Fletch. This has been another Fletch Talks video, and I'll see you all again soon in another video or live stream or whatever it may be. Cheers, guys. Have a good day, and I'll see you soon.